in order, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Barb, the roll call, please.
Mayor Steve Feldman.
Here.
Councilmembers Kevin Robinson.
Here.
Joe Mueller.
Here.
Robert Fowler.
Here.
Sarah Eckert. Here.
All right, thank you. All right, do I have a motion tonight to adopt tonight's agenda? I'll make that motion. Councilman Bauer makes a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Blumer makes a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion passes, thank you. Okay. Moving on tonight to tonight's consent agenda, do I have a motion to adopt tonight's consent agenda?
Make a motion, Mayor.
Councilman Robinson makes that motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilman Rhoda makes a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries, thank you. All right, Barb, meeting open to the public, do we have anyone?
No one signed up before the meeting.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna move right on to business. Do we have somebody?
Yes.
Please come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Gary Janish. I live at 4431, 236th Lane Northwest. And I'm here to ask for some assistance with an issue I'm having with my neighbor and the use of his property and that use affecting my lifestyle. I just have one set of papers to show.
Thank you. I'll look at the first one, pass it
I have lived in St. Francis for 24 years. And recently, the newest neighbor to move in at 4461 installed a motocross track in his backyard. And this motocross track is in a spot that is closer to my house than it is.
And you're at 4431?
Yes. And I've got aerial photos. And he is in the back corner area. I wish I had more photos for you. I've got photos from my kitchen window that show where they go and the track where they do rooster tails with their bikes. And it's not just one bike, it's at times three, two little motocross bikes and then a four-wheeler. And it was 3 weeks ago that he installed this on a Saturday. And I was subjected to that noise with 3 to 4 vehicles going from noon until 8 p.m. And then the following Sunday, I know for a fact it was at 1:30, and it did not end until 8 o'clock. And in those 2, Saturday and Sunday, I notified the police a number of times because I was having mental breakdowns because of my, I have been treated for an illness stroke quite a while. And in all those talks with the police officers that showed up, it was stated that it's his property. Noise ordinances are only valid from 10 at night till 6 or 7 in the morning. And all throughout the days, Saturday, Sunday, and then they went out and did it again for a couple hours on Tuesday. I could not hear my television. I was losing my thoughts. I was just, at one point in time, the officer asked if I was physically okay or should he call an ambulance because I was so distraught. And no matter how many Xanax I took, nothing helped. It just reached a level that I've never attained before. And now it's whatever. But I was told that it's his property. He can do as he wishes, even though the noise is impeding, it's invading my house to a point where I can't function. And there are no ordinances against this type of activity. And I'm not sure exactly how big his lot is. I know mine is 1 1/3 acres. And I looked on the property tax records, and it just says irregular for his. So I would hope that the council would consider changing this type of recreational activity to a lot that's 5 acres or more, rather than where I'm stuck right next to it. I've made photos of how the track is laid out and all the different variations. And just yesterday, we were out again and I got photos of the 2 motorcycles and the 4-wheeler as they tear up the yard.
Now, you said this track was just made in the last 3 months?
Last 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
And, I'm not sure.
So you're asking the council to do what exactly?
I'd really like a cease and desist. I would like the council to amend this type of activity to a 5-acre minimum lot. And I would like the area brought back to its original form.
And these people, is this a group of gentlemen that own this house, or one, or?
One person with a couple roommates,
And he bought it recently?
yes. Within maybe 1 year, a little more than 1 year.
And the neighbor that was there before was not a problem?
That was a major problem because he would have drinking parties, and 2, 3 in the morning decided to just shoot out fireworks. And there are a number of phone calls that I've made to the city in regards to those. Prior to him foreclosing on his house, he had renters for over a year. And their dogs would never shut up. So in 24 years, I believe I've only had 2 years worth of decent neighbors. And this one has just gone. I'm having a hard time living in my house with that activity going on. And my only recourse is to continue to call police, knowing that I feel that I'm wasting their time. But yes, I have no calls.
Are you on, well and septic or city sewer and water?
Well accepted.
That's cool. Todd, can you tell us anything about this?
Well, I know we've been out there a number of times, and from the reports that I've read, speaking with the officers, a lot of times they don't witness, you know, at their discretion, they don't witness the same amount of noise that Mr. Janish is occasionally hearing. And one time they went out and they were running their lawnmower and doing some yard work with a side-by-side UTV, which, again, in the officer's discretion, just didn't meet that obnoxious level of noise that was reported. And we just haven't, not to say that his complaints are valid, but we just haven't received a whole lot of other complaints from my area, from other neighbors, so.
Sure.
So again, it's just difficult when the officers go out there, you don't witness that same level of noise that is being complained on, so that, you know, they use their discretion. They have talked to these neighbors a number of times. They seem to want to work on it, to try to meet in the middle somewhere, but I don't have a perfect answer.
And according to my neighbor, next door on Canada, John Middleton, he has contacted the city and the police on one occasion. You know, so it's, and I did ask about the neighbor next door to 4461, and they were not there the entire weekend that this happened, but when they did get home, he did not see it as an issue. So I'm, you know, obviously bummed that that was the case, but I respect his, you know, his opinion, you know.
And just to clarify too, you had mentioned the hour, 10 o'clock to 7, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's geared maybe more towards like construction type activities, generators, things like that. So the noise ordinance is really outside of that. That can be, you know, at the officer's discretion in effect any time.
Right.
If we, you know, if they're out running a chainsaw for 10 hours next to your bedroom window, I mean, you know, but.
And that's where this, in order to get from his garage to that part of the property is my bedroom, is my family room, and you've got 2 or 3 bikes, you know, they're not just idling through it. You know, they were doing wheelies with the 4-wheelers, you know, and I just, you know, and I think I mentioned to the mayor yesterday in our conversation that I've not had any luck with the city in far as trying to make improvements to my house or my property, where they had come back, you know, I wanted to put fences on my property line. And this was in 2000, and they said, you can't do that, you have a 10-foot easement. Plus, you can't do anything in that backyard area because that's stormwater runoff. In 2009, I wanted to make an earthen berm to level out and build at pine trees to that area in the back, just to make it, you know, a nice yard for me. And that was, I came to ask for permission, and I wound up getting a letter from the city attorney stating that they have a prescriptive easement on this property, and if I do anything, please be advised the city will take enforcement action against you for any destruction, alteration of this prescriptive.
What year was that?
This was 2008. And if they, I have one.
It was 2000.
That's the first time with the 10-foot easements.
Kate, are we familiar with this property at all? This is his property?
Mayor and council, I would have to look at the property file. I don't have anything out with me tonight.
That's your.
This is mine. And this is where I wanted to build. Just so I get street level to get the trees up to a higher level of rocks on the road.
Okay, and Todd, you're telling me we have a noise ordinance between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m., correct?
Between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., but that, that's basically.
All right, but it was up to the officers.
Yeah, the hours are basically geared toward construction type activity, generators, things like that that people might have outside. The general noise ordinance has many different variables in it.
So it's up to an officer comes out of the discretion.
That can be
So-
changed.
Can we, and I want to get council's input on this too, but I'm wondering if we can't re-look at this property to see what he's talking about, these easements, and this was back when Ray Steinke was mayor. This is like 19 years ago, that's his first document I have. It says here, I've been trying to work with the city to resolve this issue. This is a timeline from 1998 all the way to 99 and 99. I mean, so it's been quite a while. So is there any way we can look at this property to see if he can do some fencing or berms or whatever he may be able to do?
Mayor and council, correct. One thing we would need to see is some type of a survey to know where any easements, wetlands, anything like that would be, and from there we can make a determination as to where items can be placed.
I have my original abstract. I've had 2 attorneys look through that abstract, and they have found no easements other than the 10 or 15 feet at the road, and the 10 or 15 feet which it shows on those documents, and those were the ones that I purchased the house with, that those are the only easements that are on my property.
So if you were allowed to, would you put up berms or fencing?
I've lost all my money. Because of this, I was let go of a job I had for 3 years because of the radios. The noise was just coming into my office, and I made the remark that I would put $100 on my boss's desk, and I would go out to the shop and smash every radio out of that. And then the next day they said, I think we should part ways, which it was a blessing, but and since then I'm working part-time, and I can handle that. I just can't handle
Okay,
it.
so if we look at this, Gary, if we look at this and say that you can do this, you're still not able to do it.
Right, but it clears up any notion between myself and the city that what I've been told for the last 20 years is garbage.
So do you want us to look at it? So, and again, I want to get council's comments here in a minute, but I'm just asking about, because I don't know how we can restrict and tell these people on their property, you can't do what you're doing on your property. We don't have an ordinance. Is there some ordinance that we have in mind there that says that this is being misused as piece of property, this neighbor of his? Is there anything like that?
Mr. Mayor, if you look at beyond the 2000, I think 4 pages, is a color photo.
Okay.
the start of my second attempt to put the earth berm in. And it was in those conversations when I received my letter from the city attorney saying, you touch that property, they're subject to, you know, grade whatever. Now, if that is still valid, that is the exact property only on his lot that has been altered or whatever.
So, Kate, I'm asking you, there's no ordinance out there that says they can't use this for what they're using it for, this four-wheeler track, whatever?
Mayor and council, we've had other issues with the same racing on the property in other areas of the city. We don't have something that necessarily prohibits a property from having a racetrack driving their four-wheeler around. One property had extensive damage and we were able to have them put back together the grounds based on erosion control and change some of the habits. But we would have to look closer at code and see if anything applies specifically to the property at hand.
Was that a 1 acre property? Do you know how big the property was?
They've all been rural properties, so it would be probably greater than an acre, 2 acres.
Okay, and that's what I believe. Because it just says irregular.
I know, but you know, Gary,
It might be just.
I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I mean, neighborhood 4 had parties and stuff like this, you know, we can't restrict that people can't breathe and have a life on their property. I mean, I understand that. I mean, I understand your situation here, but at the same time, you're asking us to restrict something. They came out with their enjoyment of their property too. Grant you that they may be selfish in how they deal with it, but you're asking the city to make a rule that affects your situation. If we do it, it has to be beneficial to the majority of our residents, not just one individual. So what I'm asking you is, if we look at this property, which I have no problem having staff do, look at your property, but even if you're allowed to do it, you say you can't do it anyways. The berms or the fencing or whatever.
Right, I financially can't do that.
So if we find out that one mistake was made 20 years ago and you're allowed to do it today, it still couldn't be done by you.
At this point in time, no. What the future holds, me. Because the road noise, since I've moved here 24 years ago, has increased. It seems like now the big oddball mufflers, you know, to sound tough and whatnot, are on a decline. There are still, you know, a lot of issues that I'm weary of. If I put a fence up, I'm going to make it worse. You know, I just, you know, I can't make a decision. I just don't know what to do. And that's part of the depression that I'm going through.
Okay, do we have other properties that have these motor racing tracks on them? No? That you know of?
Mayor and council, we have received complaints from neighbors that have neighbors that are doing this exact same thing.
And are those on 2 acre lots, 1.5 acre lots, or 5 acre lots, or which one?
I don't know the exact acreage, but they all have been in the rural areas. I would have to go back and do any research with this address specifically, looking at the conditions to see what we may be able to apply.
Let me open this up to council and get some comments from council. Kevin, let me see what you say about this.
First of all, I feel really bad for Jerry's situation. I know other communities, like Kate was just talking about, another related community had some livestock issues. Somebody came in and opened up did the same thing, had a dirt track on their property. The neighbors were there for many, many years, had horses and livestock, and all kinds of havoc and chaos ensued. And I think the city did take a deep look at it. Some neighbors came together. There were pro motocross people and pro livestock people, and I think the city eventually looked at it and then tried to give some parameters. Again, trying to tell somebody what you can and can't do with your property, that's not what we're about. I mean, the use of your property is, you know, I'm all for being respectful to neighbors. I mean, it sounds like there's not enough consideration being paid to other people there. I don't know. I guess I'd like to know, have other neighbors in this vicinity or radius, chief, had similar complaints, or have you had, is there a radius of trouble or people are concerned about this situation at all?
I'm not aware of any, but Gary did say there may have been one other neighbor that complained on
Okay.
And,
And I know sometimes some people don't want to get involved or don't want the hassle and.
and I'm not, I tend to stay in my house. I'm not one, I go out and mow the lawn, and as soon as I'm done, I'm hiding in my house.
Sure.
You know, it's, I just, yeah.
I understand. I guess, you know, again, this is the first time we've been exposed to it. I take a look at it, we look back and again, look at some neighboring cities, see what has been done. Again, to put, encumber some, you know, our ideas on another property owner because one person is concerned. But, you know, there's reasonable and unreasonable. That's kind of what I'm about. I take a step back and look at it. Again, things in government don't move super fast, but again, this is a pretty flexible council, and we do the best we can. Again, we have awesome resources and people that dive into action. We have a pecking order of things that have to take place as well, and we look at the city as a whole, not always as one person situation, but we take it all into consideration, in my opinion. So I understand what's going on. I would be willing to, you know, put it in our things to do and not just put it on a shelf somewhere. Again, other communities have dealt with it. They're not always, everybody's not always happy when it's done, but we try to find a compromise that'll work. Have you had any personal discussion? And I know this is another difficult thing, but have you had a personal discussion with neighbors at all? Or are they, hey, pal, don't bother me, you know, et cetera?
I have, early on, it was last winter, they came, that property had a snowmobile, but it was not your regular Arctic Cat or whatever, it was a mountain type snowmobile. You know, very
Long track, probably loud pipe.
very loud pipe. And I said, Alice, please, he's going right by my wall that is where I'm sitting to watch TV. And that seemed to have, you know, he seemed to respect that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I hear every now and then.
Sure.
And then with this motorcycle that he just got, you know, it was constantly back and forth, back and forth.
And again, are we to understand, is this a rental property or this is the owner?
This is an owner.
Owner.
He's got two rentals.
Okay.
And I mentioned it to him again, you know, and it seemed to stop it, but now it's just got, you know, 4 levels off the track. And the on Tuesday, after this horrid weekend, like I said, it was over 6 hours listening to this stuff on both Saturday and Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And Tuesday, they had a friend come out who had just purchased a motocross bike that they were testing.
Mm-hmm.
I have no facts, but I feel there's something where there's a garage shop going on at that property. It's just my.
Kate, one last question. Is there any differentiate between a landlord situation and having renters aboard? I mean, if they have paying customers per se, does the landlord have any obligation to adhere to anything, or he owns the property and he can, his tenants?
Owner's permission.
Yeah. Okay.
Mayor and Council, correct, we still come back to, even if he's an owner living on site, but he would need to register with our rental ordinance in place. So, you know, we could get some clarification and communication open that way.
Sure, all right. Thank you, Jerry. That's all I have, sir.
Okay. Joe?
I don't have much to add. I'm looking at this picture that Kevin's got up here. It looks like your property line is pretty close to your house there in the beginning, where it enters, which I think the fence there, you probably would be able to meet the setbacks. So I don't think, I know what you mentioned earlier, that you think that it may have been rubbish, what you've heard previously. The base of the ordinance is in place and the setbacks and whatnot. And I don't have a tape measure, but looking at the picture, it looks like you may have some trouble meeting those setbacks on the property line. I can see that right up by the house, possibly further back at the dirt bike tracks, back in kind of the corner of that pizza slice of their property. You may be able to put something up further back there to a point, but again, with the drainage and stuff that you mentioned as well, that could pose other issues as well. So, not knowing everything about it, not having people look into it, I can't say much more other than that. I do feel for you. I think it sucks that, you know, you're having a hard time and having to deal with those things, but kind of like what everybody else said, I don't know that there's much we can do as far as telling people what to do with their property. And that's why I asked too, if you were on septic and well, you're kind of close to the manufactured home park back there. So I didn't know if it was tied in with our city water or not, just because you were right there, but apparently you're not, which, I mean, that could change it from urban to rural as far as a lot of our codes go. But it sounds like you'd be rural anyway. But I wouldn't have a problem with anybody looking, you know, if you want to bring your information in and talk to staff would be the best way to ask them about where things go. But I will say, just by looking at the picture there, I think right by your house there, you're gonna have a hard time meeting setbacks, and I see what you're saying there, but.
And one thing I really don't want to screw around with, and it was one of the discussion points in 2008, is when I was planning on putting trees in, I didn't want to put them clustered so close together because the deer travel back and forth, you know, and a fence, you know, will, you know, the wildlife is, you know, what I enjoy, you know, and you got massive amounts of turkeys walking through my backyard, you know, that's kind of cool, but.
Yeah, well, we have fences today and drainage easements today. We know that for a fact. So between grading, you know, or berms or something like that, vegetation, whatever, I mean, I'm not saying something can't be done or looked into, but I don't know. I mean, you know, I kind of thought on this, but I'm going to let council talk. Sarah, yes.
Yeah, my sympathies to you. I can only imagine that would be very hard for you to deal with. And for hours on end, I understand that would be overwhelming to you, but you know, the best that we can do is we can look at it, we can have our staff look into it, and you know, if we can come up with a solution that will help you, and at least you know that in the future, should you be able to afford something, you do have that option. I think that's probably the best that we can do for you right now.
Right, but to me, all that firm and whatnot happened 18, 19 years ago is secondary to what's going on today. You know, I cannot see myself staying there if this continues. And that's the part that really sucks.
Is there anything else?
You know, maybe just, again, I know it's hard, but maybe just talk to them and say, you know, it's not that I don't want you to do this, it's not that I don't want you to be able to enjoy your property, but if you could just please, you know, not do it for hours on end, that would maybe be helpful to you. I know it's hard. And maybe they'll do it for a while and maybe they go right back. But sometimes just, you know, helping them to understand why you're asking, not just that you don't want them to do it, but that it's affecting their health. Maybe that could be beneficial. That's always
I look at this a little differently. I'm looking at your cease and desist order as a stormwater pond, and I see your map here, and this would be a question for Craig on how far up the easement would be on the other property, and that property is destroying a stormwater pond on their property. So I would push for a cease and desist on that piece of the property until we can figure out why that is designated as a stormwater pond. Because his letter states that if he did anything to this stormwater, then he would be on the hook if there were any drainage problems to other properties within his region. So I think you got a pretty good case to maintain that stormwater, and I do believe that those residents are destroying that property
By the
That's
racetrack?
by altering the elevation of that stormwater pond. So that's what I would look into.
Right, because that easement, it's on both sides of that property line. And that's my thought too, by the way, is that this racetrack is affecting their drainage too. So they've changed their lot. Look, I've always said that you can have a very expensive house in a crappy neighborhood, and it's not not such a good house, and you can have a so-so house in a wonderful neighborhood, it's a wonderful house. You just happen to have some, very much unluck with some disrespectful neighbors. But it would also help, I mean, you have 4 properties that are really in concern with this or close to it. Yet you only have one neighbor on your side and the other ones don't say anything, that's hard too, by the way. But I would agree that the pond, they probably altered their drainage on their lot if they're doing this right now. But that's not gonna help you now. So, one of the thoughts I have here, by the way, and one of the thoughts I have is, there are other city lots, rural lots that have had this issue come up. Okay, so maybe what we should do is, one, look at his property here about these drainage easements, see what's going on here. Also look at the property next door where this mobile track is, this 4-wheel track or whatever it is, and then see about how they've affected their drainage on that property. And then also maybe look at, see how other cities do this in the sense that maybe it should be more defined to this type of activity on a bigger acreage lot. I'm not saying that would be happening, but something maybe we should look into. But this will take time. This won't happen overnight. I can tell you that now.
Well, I asked out I know I included the St. Francis City Attorney's letter, and I have a copy of my attorney's rebuttal. Was that in the paperwork you saw from Daniel Schouner?
I don't have it in front of me right now.
Joe and Kevin, can you look on there and see if the rebuttal from his in the packet at the end? Can you look towards the end and see if there's a response from his attorney?
From Plymouth, Minnesota. I might say I just drew these. Because I felt because I was issued this prescriptive easement claim and going through talking to the Attorney General and wanting to know in 2000 area, in 2000 incident, he asked me to have Jim Lacey prove what his basis of authority was for the easement he was claiming on my property lines. And that's where, a year and a half, nothing was given to me in paper. Now, that's what my attorney replied. And there is
Well, look at Gary, I mean, we want to help you if we can, so here's the thing, what I think you should do, is you should bring your survey in to community development. Have us look at it, your survey that you say you have,
The abstract?
the abstract, okay? That will help us as we start, we can look at this anyways, it's going into winter right now, fall coming up here right now. We probably won't have much four-wheeling, but you may have some snowmobile issues. Like I say again, the sad part is this is not gonna happen overnight. You can continue calling the police and at their discretion, Todd, let them look carefully. And I mean, I would talk to these neighbors. And I'm sure they're really nice to the police when they're there. You know how that goes. But I can say to you that I have no problem with the council or staff looking at the easements, seeing if it's correct what was said 20 years ago. And I'm looking at the fact that maybe we should be thinking of something in a different way as far as maybe bigger lots being allowed to do this. But that's a law change, and we're very cautious about doing that. Okay? Again, whatever we do has to be beneficial to the majority of our residents, not one over the others. So I want to make that perfectly clear, because if we took on everything everybody else comes in here for on their personal thing here, we have many more laws than we do, and we can't run like that. So it has to be beneficial to the majority of our residents, as I stated before. So, Joe, you got something you want to
I was going to ask, I don't know, Craig, clarify this maybe for me too, but is the drainage easement, is that considered wetland then? Or
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It could be for wetlands, stormwater ponds, drainage lagoons.
But we have homes with fences and drainage easements right now. I know exactly where one is. So, I mean, between berms and, vegetation, whatever may be able to be done in the future, whatever. But I'm saying that maybe we should look at this in the sense that maybe 1.5 acre lots are too small to have road tracks like this. I'm not saying it is or isn't, but maybe something we should look into. And we'll be more than glad to look into it, because you brought this to our attention. But I can't tell you within a day how we'll end up. I have no guarantee. I can't guarantee you that a law will be made or put into effect. But we will look into it.
I appreciate that.
In the meantime, what I'd suggest you do is, and I told you this on the phone when I had conversations for you, have a notepad by the bed, date the time and the day that it is happening, what hour it is, what they're doing, so that gives the police something to go on. If it's 11 p.m. at night, that's a whole different ballgame. But even during the day or whatever, it's up to the discretion of the police, whatever. Like I say, the police reports are going to say one thing. Your notes will say another thing and support that information to the police. And maybe sooner or later, we can do a little more effective for you. Does that sound about right with council?
And I feel like I'm getting petty, but I did take photos of today of that property as it sits, and I just.
Well, I've seen this many times. You as a resident, if you have a concern, you bring it to the council. We will look into it, and we will look into this. But like I say, at the end of the day, I don't know what can be done.
Right.
But we will look into it with full due diligence.
I know he had trailers on his property and trucks that the city had to remove, which he did, so.
All right, can I have these pictures here?
Yes.
I'll pass this on to our school compliance people and stuff like that. And we'll look into this, but bring the abstract into the city, drop it off with Kate or the city. I'll say for the receptionist, Lisa, at the hall.
Right, I can do that tomorrow.
Whatever's good for you.
Okay, thank you very much for your time, and sorry to take up so much.
That's okay. Thank you all. All right. Or anything else?
No.
Someone else did?
Oh,
Name and address.
My name is Joseph Morrell. I live at 4360 Yukon Street, obviously St. Francis. I came to speak on a full-time fire chief position. I'm sorry, Dave, I don't mean to disrespect you, but at $60,000, you can hire 3 more reserve fire department. I don't know. We already have a full-time police department, but it seems that kids are running around car shopping, there's still crime happening. I mean, I don't know. And there's been a buzz on Facebook, obviously. We've already discussed this issue, council, about people showing up. And I told them basically get off your rear and come up here and say something. Don't sit there and squeal about it. If you're going to do something, say something, come up here, tell your elected officials that's what they're there for. But I guess I came to speak upon that. And I guess upon we elected you to straighten things out. And I just, out of respect to Dave, I don't see him jumping in the Batmobile and flying out there, putting the fire out by himself, I think, there's better effective ways they could be, addressing some of these issues than just kind of the same thing that the school district's been doing, is just throwing money at the issue. So, thank you, Council.
Well, seeing as you've opened up the door here, so let's just bring out some facts for everybody here, because we know how the distortion goes on the Facebook pages, and I agree with you, as Councilmember Robinson said many months ago at a council meeting, instead of putting 30 minutes on distortion on Facebook, come and talk to us face to face and ask questions, which I appreciate what you just did. This was not a decision that was done lightly by any stretch of imagination, and for over 20 years in our fire department, we've not had good leadership in that department. And the cost factor, by the way, on a medium household price of $200,000 in the city, the actual amount of property tax, city portion, would be $22.20 a year. $1.85 more a month to have a full-time fire chief. Not $600 a year, not $600 a month, but $22.20 a year. That's the difference. And also, we have 2 years invested in this gentleman here. This gentleman has done a fantastic job in a short period of time here, but he's split between his another job and of course his family. But the point of it is, we are now getting a solid fire department down with solid leadership, with a level of accountability and a level of effectiveness that has not been here for 20 plus years. And that's a fact for anybody who's lived here that long, to know what our fire station's been like. The building has been run down. In the last couple of years, we put the maintenance back in line with the building. We've got that on top there. Fixed the roof leaks, fixed the wall leaks, fixed the air leaks, vented the dryers properly for securing the building, and kept the building maintained, which was not done here for 20 plus years. One of the biggest things in the city that I've seen over the time that I've been on as mayor, and the 2 years I put on that seat that you're sitting in right now, was the fact that money was not spent properly or well in the city for any return on the dollar. I've never supported something that would break the backs of the residents of the city, and nor will I ever do that. But in this particular situation, I feel that every department head should have a full-time leader, because you stay consistent with the leadership. And this leadership has been effective in the last 2 years it's been here. He also brings great EMT experience here, which you've never had here before. The training is up. The grants that he's got, over $30,000 in grants approved here for our city. I believe this is a good move for the city, but I would not support it myself if I thought that it was a big burden to each taxpayer. But once again, for fact, it is a $22.20 increase on your city portion of your property tax on a house value at $200,000. And that is a fact. And I've heard some things on the post where they say that his wage is going to go up to $120,000. Not true whatsoever. I think that's a pay scale is at what price? At 83 or 83,000. But yet on Facebook I hear people saying it's $120,000. And I commend you for coming forward to the council and asking these questions here. And I wish other people would do that instead of going on the Facebook and just assuming you know facts when you don't. But as far as, like I say here, I know there's one gentleman on our council that's not for this, and there was a few other ones that had some questions. We cut the budget back where we had to. We made $30,000 in cuts in the budget to make this work. But long term, I feel this is effective. I also have to say to you and the public also that we have check and balances in place. We have a finance committee that meets once a month. We also do on a quarterly, semi-annual, and annual basis. Nothing is etched in stone here. We continuously look at the numbers, which was never done here before, and we make all leaders in our staff and department heads accountable to the council, which is accountable to you, the public. So this was not done on just something frivolous that we just decided to go ahead and make him full-time. And then we did not make the fire department full-time. These people lay their lives on the lines, 15 below zero, they're out there fighting fires for $15 an hour. I think they do it because they care about the city, they care about what they do, and they have real loyalty to their job and the people they serve. But to me, we're not asking for a full-time fire department, we're asking for a full-time chief so that we have continuity and leadership long-term and get the effectiveness our fire department should give.
Mr. Felton, can I ask one question? That was also one. Can I come up and ask one question?
Please, state your name and address.
My name is Sarah, and I live at 2346 Ferry Street, Northwest in St. Francis. The one question I do have is why are all the firefighters, volunteer firefighters on the fire department required to live within city limits except for our chief? Could you please answer that? Thank you.
I will say to you that here, we have other department heads that don't live our full-time in the area either.
But not all, everybody's required to live within city limits except our fire department members. Please, yes, somebody answer that.
Mr. Mayor, we have no residency requirement. We have a 10-minute time response requirement. It's actually illegal for us to say that somebody has to live within the city limits. We can have a time requirement. We cannot have a residency requirement.
But do you live within that 10 minutes?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Neither did Dean Kapler, nor did Matt Kohl when he got
Matt
hired.
moved here though,
Under his own choice.
without being full-time.
Under his own choice.
Mhm.
It wasn't required.
He's a decent person.
I'm not saying that he's not. You know, if my residency is an issue, I fill out an application based on the requirements of the position, right? So you can be mad about that. I didn't write those job requirements.
I'm not, that's one of the other questions on Facebook though, is why you were not required to live within.
And I don't have an answer for you, other than what I can tell you is when Matt was hired, he didn't live in the city. When Dean was here, he did not live in the city either. So we're not doing anything differently than what previous chiefs had for expectations. So that's the best that I can answer that. But as far as the firefighters, they're not required to be city residents. They have that time requirement. So,
The firefighter.
sure.
Yes, please.
Do we know, do our other cities, do their chiefs live in, I mean?
Very few.
Okay.
East Bethel, for example, their fire chief lives in Pine City. Andover's fire chief lives in Nowden. Brooklyn Park's fire chief lives in Elk River. It's actually becoming more and more uncommon than you would expect. I think the only one that I can think of off the top of my head accurately is Oak Grove's chief lives in Oak Grove. But for me to speak eloquently and intelligently about where all the other fire chiefs live, very few actually live in the city that they serve.
And I think just a couple more comments
Please.
too. I did see somewhere out there that it was noted, or somebody said that Dave wrote his job description. I do not believe, I'm wrong, but I don't believe that Dave handed us a job description and said, I'd like to be your fire chief. I believe that staff came up with a job description, and that's where that came from, so I just want that. And I also want people to understand that it's not that all of us council members don't want to comment or don't care, but we have to be careful about our interactions on social media too. And so for me, when I see that one or two other council members have already jumped in, I don't feel like it's a good idea for me to jump in there too, just to
Well,
be
you
on the
can't
stage.
because of open meeting.
Right, so, it's not that we're not paying attention, it's not that we don't care, we just can't. If two people have already commented on there, I'm not jumping in to make a comment. So, again, please email us. Email each of us and tell us what you're thinking, or better yet, come to a meeting. We would love to have you come and tell us. But I just need people, because on the thread, it's, can somebody tag all the council members? Well, yeah, they can, but that's still not going to allow the other ones who haven't commented prior. We still can't comment on that.
Right, explain open meeting law to the public, Joe.
I mean, Dave, yeah.
Or Dave, I don't care.
That's fine. It basically means that if you're gonna have a quorum, 3 members, you have to have a public meeting. And if you have a different format where you don't have that, you could have a serial meeting, and that would be illegal.
So 2 is okay, 3 is not.
Correct.
So the public knows that.
I guess I just want to thank council. I just want to bring it to your attention because the people in our community think that they can just go on social media and squeal about it, and they think they're going to get the change. It's just like the Highway 47 project that they finally pulled their heads on their rear end and decided, hey, we all need to come together as a group and approach the council, approach the DOT, and say, hey, we need this to change, and look at where it's going. But
No, and I appreciate
here
you.
I am looking like a big a-hole, speaking for everybody, saying, hey, come in here, you want representation, talk to your representatives that represent you. Don't sit and squeal about it on the internet or on the TV or on the phone or at the bar. Show up, send emails. It's ridiculous. That's what you're paying your tax dollars for. I mean, and I want to say thank you very much.
And I appreciate you doing it.
Mr. Mayor, I got one thing. I was gone on a family matter, took me out during the August work session for this. So I've been combing through the work session pamphlet. And I've called every fire department that was listed as, we have a full-time fire chief. Every one of them that's listed on there, all the way to North St. Paul to not wherever it is, way up north, International Falls, every one of their fire chiefs live within the city. Might not be a requirement, but it's something that every city that was listed as a comparison to let's go full-time, every one of those chiefs live within the city because they respond. And I am adamantly against that because if we're going to hire some people, like you say, Joe, let's put them within the city, a work crew that can work Monday through Friday. Let's hire 2 people to sit in our station. Let's create some sort of Bethel, Oak Grove, now then group and get a duty crew. Let's hire someone like that. Let's get what we're being paid at least for a half-time fire chief. Let's get the things that we're supposed to be getting. I'm a 12-year veteran of a firefighter, and there is not much change in St. Francis as everybody is dreaming of. There's a lot of shortcomings, and all these things seem to be hinged on hiring a fire chief, and all these things are going to be fixed. Pre-plans, SCBA monthly inspections, all these things are deficient in St. Francis. And what we need is a good chief to get all those deficiencies done without saying, I need to be full-time. You should be doing those at part-time because the workload is not that great. Our call volume is not where it should be. All those cities that were listed as comparisons, they're at 1,500 calls. All those numbers are skewed. I called every one of those chiefs. I've talked to them for the last week. And these numbers are skewed. And we get one comparison of a fire department that has no full-time chief, Oak Grove. That is ridiculous. We should have a comparison of a bunch of cities that have no full-time chief and a bunch of cities that have a full-time chief so that we can make a smart decision. And right now, the workload doesn't require a full-time fire chief.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
In the 12 years you were on the fire department, how come these changes you're talking about right now weren't implemented?
Because the leadership, the chief, assistant chief, captains, the leadership was not there. I didn't want to put
the leadership wasn't there.
And it still isn't.
It still isn't, in
It
your
still isn't.
opinion.
Nope. In a lot of opinions.
In your opinion.
A lot of opinions. Look at the
Joe, I
stats.
want to tell you something for a fact you're on record here. This gentleman just got the 2019 Firefighter of the Year Award for populations of cities under 10,000. Did you know that? The Firefighter of the Year Award for 2019.
And why do we have so many shortcomings? Why? Dean didn't fix it, he came from Ramsey.
This isn't an agenda item,
Yeah.
Ron. This is
No,
not
it's
time
not,
to
because
be-
I was told today that we won't have a work session on
Brings
this
up
because the
a
decision's
concern,
already been
which is great
made.
that you guys bring up concerns and then talk about concerns
Yeah, that's
and all that.
that's a good
but
point.
As of right now,
That's a good point.
it's getting out of hand, and I think that, you know, like I say, just because somebody brings it up doesn't mean we open up the door for a whole new agenda item either.
I agree with you.
So,
On that, I want to thank you, Joe, for coming forth and bringing it to our attention, and I would emphasize to people, if you want to come and bring your thoughts to us, come and bring your thoughts to us.
Sorry to stir the drink. I just,
No, that's fine.
I thought
This was stirred way before you got here, trust me, this was stirred way before.
I just thought it would
Come
be
back soon,
important.
Joe.
I thought it would be important for the residents that feel so strongly should come voice their opinions to their representatives.
we would appreciate that.
We appreciate that very much, thank you for bringing it to our attention, hopefully the public will see.
And
that.
I'm listening, and there's a lot that do not. So thanks for coming, Joe.
And there's also a lot that do. I'll leave it at that. All right, anybody else want to know the public?
And I like to leave it.
Okay. Let's move on to business.
I just need to say though.
Go ahead.
So, Rob said he called all these departments. I trust that the information we got, I don't think think that anybody of our staff just pulled those numbers out to make it look that way, and I don't think that was a fair comment to make. If there's differences in numbers, maybe they're given, I can't tell you that, but I don't think that comment was fair, nor did our chief come to us and say, hey, you should probably hire me full-time. I can do a better job if I'm full-time. So those two comments, I don't think were quite fair. I understand the passion, and as we've talked about before, please bring us some of that information that you're getting. You want to see it, because we don't have that in front of us, and you have different information. So if you can provide that to us at a work session, or
We did tell you to do that the last work
whatever.
session. You did do
We
that.
did.
I talked to Joe today because I'm gathering my information, and he said there's no reason to have this as a work session item anymore. I was told that today. So how can I bring it to you every time I have to bring it up at a city council meeting to get my word out?
Well, then I'll tell you right here on record. Bring it to us and we'll set a work
I've
session.
already said it.
Then we'll set a work session.
Thank you.
Okay? That's that. Now, can we please move on to these new business here? And we'll set the work session here at the end of the meeting as it is. As per 910, I'm going to get to this so I get this right here. As per 910, 236 Avenue Northwest variance request resolution 2019-45.
Mayor and Council, for you tonight is a variance request for the property located at 910 236 Avenue Northwest. So the applicant is requesting to construct a 1,500 square foot pole barn in the rear of the property, and that would be used to house RV and other recreational equipment that would be used by the property owners. The lot is located in eastern St. Francis, within the Mundell Estates subdivision. So the variances requested tonight, there are two. The first is a size variance to construct a 1,500 square foot pole barn, and the second is a height variance to construct a pole barn with a sidewall height of 13 feet. And those are both because they're on a 2.45 acre lot. So existing conditions on this site, there is an existing single-family residence that's on this property. There are mature trees and a fence which border the western edge of the property, and that provides buffer from the neighboring properties to the west. So this lot is located within the city's rural residential district, and rural residential lots are required to have an area of 2.5 acres. This lot in question today has an area of 2.45 acres. So it makes it an undersized lot in the rural residential district. The way that the accessory structure requirements are set up in our code is that they differ between size of lot. So for lots that are between 1 and 2.5 acres, residents are allowed to have a total detached accessory square footage of 1,200 square feet with a maximum number of one building and a sidewall height of 12 feet. For a lot that's 2.5 to 5 acres, which is what you typically see for a rural residential district lot, you'd be allowed to have 1,500 square feet of detached accessory structure space. You'd be able to have two buildings with a sidewall height of 14 feet. So what's proposed this evening with this property is 1,500 square feet of total detached accessory structure square footage and a maximum sidewall height of 13 square feet. So again, above what is allowed for 1 to 2.5 acre lots, but within the standards for lots that are 2.5 to 5 acres. So all required setbacks are met with the proposal. So there's 25-foot setbacks that are required from the side and rear lot lines of these properties. And then the conditions that would be required for this property would be to remove the existing chicken coop, and the applicant has already stated that that would not be an issue. And that's so that we'd be able to meet that maximum number of buildings would be 1. And then the second condition, which was brought up at the Planning Commission, would be to have the applicant provide a survey that demonstrates that the building would not be located within a secondary septic site. So that in the event of any septic site failure, there would still be room to have a secondary site. Accessory structures by the code are also required to be similar in exterior appearance to the primary structure. So the applicant has indicated that the color of the accessory structure will match the principal structure. And the following are the remainder of the things that are listed there the roof pitch, the proportion of the windows and doors, the overhang depth. Those are included as conditions of approval to make those similar in appearance to the principal structure. So the Planning Commission recommended approval of both the size and height variances. And the suggested motion is on the screen, as well as in your packets. And a draft resolution has been included for your review as well in the packet. Are there any questions?
I have some questions. First of all, so the site of where they want this pole barn located will not affect the secondary site of septic or well or septic area?
That is what the condition is for, to ensure that it won't.
Now, on page 41 of the packet here, I see that they requested, the size was right, 32 by 46.875, which is equivalent to 1,500 square feet, but they said they wanted 14 feet 10. So is it 13 they agreed to?
Yes, Mayor and Council, that was a point of clarification that I worked with the applicant on. And when I asked, what is the actual sidewall height of the structure proposed to be, the answer I was given was it would be between 12 feet 9 inches and 13 feet. So the variance would be for 13 feet.
Because basically on a 1 to 2.5 acre lot, you have 12 feet height. 2.5 to 5, you have 14. So this is right in the middle.
Right.
All right. And, but very important about the septic, because we don't want that building to affect that in case the other field goes bad. I think that pretty much answers the question, but they understand. So instead of 12.9, the best thing to do is you round about to 13.
Correct.
Which makes it, that will fit their vehicle.
Yes, well, and in some areas it will be 13 feet. So it's not necessarily rounding. It's just that in some areas that sidewall height will be 13. So that's why it's 13.
So the 1410 from their request is off the table.
Correct.
All right, Sarah, do you have any comments on this?
No, it seems like they have worked hard to come to an agreement with the city. And the planning commission looked at it and said that they think it's okay, and I trust that's work, and so I'm okay with that.
Rob?
Variances are a crazy thing because, here we are looking at, 2.5 versus 2.45. Now, if we approve this variance, so someone else with a 2.45 could come in and get this thing without having to go through the variance process, or how do they would have to do the variance
No,
application
Mayor and
as
Council,
well?
the variance process would still be required.
Okay.
The main finding for this lot itself is because it is in the rural residential district, and those lots are required to be 2.5 acres.
Gotcha. All right.
The only way you could change that would be with 2.45 for
Right. And I was making sure that that's not what we're kind of doing. All right.
No, I would like to thank the applicant for going through the process rather than just building it and having to deal with it after the fact. So if that's you guys, thank you very much.
Yeah, that's us.
Kevin?
I have the privilege of being the liaison, to the planning commission, and I've been through all this, and that was my concern, Mayor, also was the availability for the homeowner to have a secondary septic system, and those adjustments we made according to Beth, and that's all my concern. And again, Joe Simmons, thank you for going through the process and not asking for forgiveness after the, hey, isn't this great? And then all the other dominoes fall down, but a nice job, thank you.
Okay, on that, any further discussion by council, anyone? Okay, then I think what we need is a vote on this. So do I have a motion to adopt resolution 2019-45 as per 910 236 Avenue Northwest variance request?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Wood makes that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilor Duar makes second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you folks very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your vehicle.
We get our permit tomorrow?
Oh, my. You can always ask.
Hey.
All right, moving on to Turtle Ponds 4th and 5th edition.
Mayor and Council, before you tonight are preliminary plat requests for the 4th and 5th edition of Turtle Ponds subdivision. So just a little explanation of how we're going to work this tonight. So I'll go through the 4th edition information, and if you have any clarifying questions, The answer goes at that time. And then I'll go through the 5th edition and any questions for that. And then at the end, we'll do all of the motions, if that works for everyone. So,
All right.
with that, Turtle Pond's 4th edition. The 4th edition is proposed to include 13 detached townhome lots that would have access onto a private street. So, as part of this, the applicant is requesting development stage PUD amendment approval to allow multifamily uses on Outlot B. And then they're also requesting preliminary plat approval for the 4th edition. So this is a 3-acre site that's located along 229th Avenue and Arrowhead Street. And the site is currently vacant, and there's some existing vegetation that's located along the north and west property lines. So this piece of property was included as part of the overall Turtle Run PUD, which was established in 1996. And this particular site was planned for commercial use. So you can see up in there, it's that orangish reddish color. So within that overall PUD, the parcel was created as Outlot D of the first edition of the Turtle Ponds subdivision. So again, that's in that southeast corner of the overall PUD. And this first edition included 38 attached townhomes in 10 buildings. So between 2 and 4 units per building. And Outlot D again was left vacant to be used for commercial use in the future. So this site is guided commercial by the 2030 comprehensive plan, and that's consistent again with the PUD plan that was established in 1996. However, the proposed development of the detached townhomes is inconsistent with the 2030 comprehensive plan. However, the draft 2040 plan guides the area for medium density residential, which is between 3 and 7 units per acre. So the proposed density for this parcel would be 4.35, which is smack in the middle of that 3 to 7 units. The proposed development would be consistent with the draft 2040 plan. Therefore, approval of the preliminary plat would be conditioned upon adoption of the 2040 plan. So this couldn't fully come into effect until the 2040 plan is adopted. So, as part of the original 1996 PUD, this site was planned for commercial use. The applicant is requesting to amend the PUD to plan the site for multifamily residential instead. And this is something that staff supports. So the preliminary plat itself is up on the screen. Again, it's 13 lots. There is a private street proposed, which would be providing access to all of the lots that would empty out onto Arrowhead Street. And that proposed street is created as part of the Outlot B. And it provides a turnaround as well as adequate guest parking for the detached townhomes. So as far as zoning goes, this property is zoned Turtle Run PUD. And all proposed lots do meet the PUD's dimensional standards that were established when the PUD was first created. So talking a little bit more about the private street. Again, the proposed private street connects to Arrowhead Street on the eastern side and provides access to each of the 13 lots. And this would be a 24-foot wide private road. There are other private streets within the development. Typically, they range in width between 20 and 22 feet. So this would be slightly wider than the private streets that are already there today. This street would be created as an outlot and would be required to be maintained with an HOA or some other similar organization. So the city would not be maintaining the roads or this private road. And again, there are several existing private streets that are already part of this whole PUD. This private street, just to compare to city standards, so the city standards for local streets require a 60-foot right-of-way and then 32-foot pavement width. So again, this is 24 feet wide. There is a small spur to the north that would provide a turnaround for larger vehicles. And then another point to make here is that this does not connect to 230th Court to the north. That street is also a private street, but is maintained by a separate homeowners association. So just something to keep in mind there. So for utilities and stormwater, There are public utilities along Arrowhead Street that will be proposed to extend west to serve this development. There is an existing stormwater pond just to the north of this particular property, and that would be extended into the northeastern corner of this property to serve the additional development that's proposed. And then the applicant is also proposing to create an infiltration basin along the southern property line. And the city engineer has reviewed these plans and has made some technical comments. As far as landscaping goes, there are existing trees along the north and western property boundaries. The applicant has mentioned that the existing evergreens that are along that western property boundary would be saved if possible. That is really dependent upon grading. And the applicant is proposing to plant 2 trees per lot, one in the front and one in the backyard. And that's consistent with the pattern that's been established in the earlier phases of this PUD. So the Planning Commission recommended approval of both the development stage PUD amendment and the 4th edition preliminary plat. So before I go on and talk about the 5th edition, are there any questions about the 4th edition?
Yeah, I have some here. On page 59 here, 59. It talks about the PUD standards, and it says proposed. Okay, am I right on this one for the 4th, right? 13 lots.
Page 3 of that.
Well, it's page 3 of 59. Page 3. Page 3, land use commercial, and it says here dimensional standards, okay?
Yes.
So what I want to know is, Beth, there's 13 proposed lots, as you stated. PUD standards of the existing, I take it right now, is 4,250 square feet, so proposed, it meets all the square footages or exceeds those. I have no problem with that. Lot width 46 and 47 exceeds that, front setback. But what I want to know is the side setbacks. PUD standard is 10 feet building. Is that 5 feet off the property line for each structure? 10 feet total?
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, it's a good question. What we're working with this PUD is that we don't have the full documentation. So when I was looking at the PUD overall standards, I'm looking at what's been created as part of this PUD already. And what I've found is that it varies between, is the garage 5 feet off, or is the house 10 feet off, or what does it work? It generally works out to be a 10-foot building separation.
A 10-foot between 2 structures,
Between 2
so 5 and 5. The reason I state this is because the proposed is 7.5 feet, 15 total. But I've seen what we did at the Rum River Terrace behind the hardware store. I campaigned in that area, I've seen the homes in that area, and 7.5 feet off the property line is close. I mean, it's close. I've been a builder for 25 years, and I can tell you 10 feet off the property line on each side is 20, is much better. I'm not saying it can be done here, so my question to you is was the original PUD 10, and now they're making it 15, so that is better. But I don't like 7.5 feet setbacks outside. It's one thing when you have a 10 off of a house and 6 off a garage, because no one lives in the garage, okay? That's different. But when you're 7.5 feet off a property line from a house to a house, you can almost put your hand out there and shake the hand of your neighbor. I mean, that's how close you are. And I've seen that at Rum River Terrace, which was before we came on as council, and it had to be reworked so that we could sell it out. It was sold out by the developer, I understand that. But some of these things I think should be questioned out before we get to that phase. So my question to you is can they do better than that?
Mayor and Council, this is
For the homeowners.
7.5 feet that's proposed is more than the other detached small lot homes that are part of this PUD. So it would be a larger setback. It also meets the code requirement of 12-foot building separation. So I believe that this would be an improvement over the other detached small lot parcels that are already in that PUD.
Because, Kate, tell me, the Rum River Terrace, that's a 5 foot off the line, isn't it? As I recall?
Mayor Council, correct. That one, though, was originally started as connected units.
Right,
So
and then we
that's why
split
that
them.
one ended up a little bit tighter than we may have loved otherwise.
So and I understand what you're saying here, and it makes me feel better about the 7.5, 15. But I may be saying to you, and Craig, maybe you can tell me too, but I'm just saying, I've seen homes over the years get bigger and bigger, and the lots get smaller and smaller. You know, city lots just under 11,000 square feet. But if you look at homes like on Hayden Lake in Champlin, that was a Gagne development, there's $800,000 homes with lots that are so small, it's amazing that it's all house. You know, and I don't really want that. When I campaigned in that area, I saw the closeness of those houses to each other, and I can only tell you that some of the neighbors responded about how they didn't like that. It was done, and it was done before us, and we're living with it now. But I would recommend not going less than the 7.5. Now, I would prefer more 10 myself, but 7.5, 15 total is much better than 10, but not as good as 20. I just want to get that on record, okay? Because I just see these houses getting so big and these lots getting so small, so crammed. I mean, you know, to me, I mean, it's like there's no land anymore. It's just that people don't want to do any yard work or nothing. But when a house is that close, you could literally stick a tape measure from one window to the other, or a fishing rod, and actually hit your neighbor's house. I mean, that's insane. Off a garage is one thing, house is another thing. House in a garage is one thing, house in a house is another thing. I just want to get that on record. So, any other comment, Kevin, that you might have on this particular situation?
I was present at the original P&Z meeting, and the residents to the, I guess would be to the north, were concerned more about some trees or foliage or that would block, or would that be, will those things be addressed? You know, they had some concerns. Again, I can understand, you know, we've lived here forever, we see the wildlife, things change. This property is obviously a buildable property. But any more thought or suggestions we can make to the developer to increase that barrier situation? That's not really our place.
Mayor and Council, I believe at the Planning Commission there was a condition that was recommended that was kind of a friendly recommendation to the applicant to say, you know, take into consideration the privacy of your neighbors and not requiring any vegetation or fencing, but to have the applicant take into consideration the fact that there are existing neighbors here who have already been established. So if it's not already included in the resolution, that would be something that could be included.
Was there any other correspondence from the people that came to the meeting? Did they offer anything for this final round of review?
No, I have not heard from the residents as far as this final round.
Okay. Also, the private road, we brought this up at another time or another situation. Private roads, HOA will take care of it. Again, as the mayor said, when we're out knocking doors and talking to the citizens that live here, they have concerns that their areas aren't getting plowed. The HOAs kind of either dissolve or there's some upheaval and things aren't getting squared away or taken care of. What kind of assurances do the people who are buying these things, if this does come to fruition, get that this will be taken care of? I mean, private road as opposed to St. Francis, oh, we don't go there, let's turn around here, we'll plow our city streets. And what kind of assurances can the people have?
Be between them and the homeowner organization.
Mayor and Council, correct. When they go into a situation with a private road, it really falls back on those HOAs. For the city to ever take the road over, if it's not built to our standards, and I would ask Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's not built to our standards, it's very difficult for us to take that on in the future. So it is a risk of getting into a situation as a homeowner if you're entering into an HRA.
So it's buyer beware.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say, you know, our requirements for road, that's width-wise, right? So
Correct.
Width-wise, so.
For example, these townhomes are 66 feet apart. We require a 60-foot right-of-way. You'd essentially lose a whole row of townhomes if they went with city standards.
Right,
So that's why they do the private streets and
And because this is already, they already have a homeowners association with the original PUD, correct?
There are several homeowners associations
Several.
as part of this.
So this is pretty much part status quo for this type of development.
Would it be a separate HOA for this development? So it's a whole nother little nucleus of.
And Kevin, where we brought that up last time is when we were talking about that a site on Ambassador 241, that was a different type of, that was all villas and single family residential, not an HOA type of thing.
Okay.
So,
But I have run into that where there are an
I have
HOA,
too.
and, there, let's see, I think that's for PD 5. That's the only question I have for that, thank you.
So it seems like this is more common for this type of development, in this townhome type of situation.
Correct, Mayor and Council, this development has several private streets, several, kind of knows exactly like what's being proposed.
So my point is, at this particular point in time, if we were to change it for this particular one, we gain nothing. Because there's still gonna be other HOAs that are dealing with their PUDs, so we don't really come out positive on this one. Joe?
My question is gonna be why the road wouldn't connect to the other road out there, the court, but it makes more sense now with two separate organizations.
Sarah?
No, questions were answered by comments that I was going to feel more.
Okay, Rob?
Mine was, and I called Kate today about it, is pushing that road all the way up. I don't care if there's 6 inches between it. At least a fire truck could jump that 6 inches if need be because right now, emergency services for just those, it would be a nightmare to get a bunch of vehicles in there. And like you're saying, the houses are so close together. It would be a logistical nightmare, and you'd want to, bring a couple of vehicles into the north. I would request that.
Are you talking about that parking spot that goes on?
That
Yeah,
little
spot.
turnaround nook thing, I would request that goes all the way up to the lot line and, I don't know, wherever that butts up. If there's easement, require that they butt it up to, the north road. It looks like it would be pretty close to button it up. Page 61. And if you look at, the plan is to bring it off Arrowhead. One of my concerns was how close is that to turning onto County Road, and if that was a distance restriction. And that was cleared up, so that doesn't, I'm still a little opposed to it. I think they could turn it up and go north, but I don't know, maybe if they join with the other HOA, that be a requirement, that road get connected. If it stays separate, and I just think emergency services logistically, that's a nightmare to get into service those. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I think the advantage that we have with this development is thankfully it's in a water area, so we would have access to wetlands, which provides us some freedom and spacing of our vehicles. We would have to be cognizant to make smart tactical decisions at the beginning, whether that's backing in or making sure that we have appropriate distances between hydrants. I think it's workable. I agree with you with that little offshoot there. If you can extend it a little bit so we have more of a turning radius and navigate in and out, that would provide an advantage for us, without question. But the fact that this will be in a hydrogen area, we can make some tactical arrangements if need be. The bigger concern, which we really can't do anything about it, the closer we put these houses together, the wrapped in vinyl, one gets you 2, and if you have a windy day, 2 gets you 3. So.
And that's why I would like that road to extend. Let's say you have a fire in one of those on the north side, and it sets the other one on fire. Now you got to pull all your vehicles out and around and go into different parts where you could just kind of keep scooching them north on that road. So I would definitely like to see that road connected, either just butted up to the other one by the lot line. Doesn't have to be seamless, I would think, but I would think it would need to be a requirement to push that up to the lot line.
Are these units sprinklered at all?
No, I don't think so.
Mayor and Council, until we connect 3 or more, they don't require me.
Because they're single. Okay. Anyone else?
That's it.
All right. Now we'll move on.
Okay. All right. 15 fifth edition. So, Mayor and Council, the applicant is also requesting preliminary approval of Turtle Pond's fifth edition this evening. So the fifth edition consists of 2 single-family lots. The requests include development stage PUD amendment to allow single-family uses on this site, preliminary plat approval of the fifth edition, and with the preliminary plat, it would also be a drainage and utility easement vacation. So existing conditions on this site, the site is currently vacant. It's roughly 10 acres. Again, it's along 229th Avenue, just west of Arrowhead Street. So there is an Anoka County ditch that runs north to south along the eastern edge of the property. And the entire property has a fairly large wetland complex on most of the land there. So again, this piece of property was included as part of the Turtle Run PUD that was established in 1996. This area was planned for multifamily development. The parcel in question tonight is Outlot B of Turtle Pond's third edition currently. And the third edition includes 18 attached townhomes. So this concept plan was the applicant brought a concept plan before the Planning Commission and the Council in October of last year. And that concept plan showed 8 detached townhome units. That's what was proposed. And a large part of the review is spent focusing on the floodplain and the wetlands that are on this site. The city was pretty concerned about the location of those and how that meshed with the proposed units. So the applicant completed a wetland delineation in spring of 2019. And after that, it was determined that the detached townhome units really wouldn't be feasible on this site. So single-family units are what would work for this area, just based on the amount of wetland that's on this site. So the plans were revised accordingly for single-family homes. And again, because this site was planned for multifamily use by the existing Turtle Run PUD, the applicant is requesting to amend this PUD to plan the site for single-family residential, now that it's been determined that that's really what's feasible on the site. So the preliminary plat itself includes 2 lots with access onto 230th Court Northwest. And this 230th Court is a public street. And again, the wetlands take up roughly 9 acres of the 10-acre site. So this property again is zoned Turtle Run PUD. And the proposed lots generally meet the PUD's dimensional standards. There are a few things to note here. So lot 1, which is the southern lot, does not have direct access onto 230th Court. Instead, there's a 30-foot wide access easement that's proposed to cross lot 2 and serve lot 1. So that means that lot 1 at the front setback line is 30 feet wide instead of what's typically required for a cul-de-sac to be 49 feet as part of this PUD. The code does allow for irregularly shaped lots if the developer has been able to demonstrate that an ability to place structures that are compatible with the surrounding neighborhood on the site. And that is the case here. A structure would be able to be placed on the site that's compatible with the neighborhood. There are just a few interesting tweaks with this specific lot based on the placement of how the lot lines are drawn. So again, both of these lots would have access on the 230th Court Northwest. There's a 30-foot access easement that would be proposed for lot 1. And the proposed development was submitted to Anoka County for their comments. The fourth edition was also submitted to Anoka County for their comments. And that's simply because they're located along 229. No comments were received from Anoka County. Staff doesn't believe that there's going to be a significant impact on 229 as this development empties onto 230th Court and then Arrowhead before hitting 229. So the driveways, hopefully you can see on that graphic there. There are 12-foot wide paved driveways that are proposed. Both would come off of a relatively small area on the southeastern portion of that cul-de-sac. And these driveways are proposed to go over what is currently wetland and floodplain. So the applicant is proposing to buy wetland replacement credits. You have to fill roughly 3,600 square feet of wetland, and so is proposing to buy wetland replacement credits for that. And then as far as floodplain mitigation, the applicant is providing adequate floodplain mitigation. You can see it there southeast of the proposed home pads. That's all was proposed for floodplain mitigation. So, as I mentioned a little bit about wetlands, there is a large wetland complex on the site. However, all proposed development will be outside of the existing floodplain and wetland, again, excepting the driveways, which will be filled to raise those out of the floodplain. So, looking a little bit at landscaping, there are some existing trees along the eastern property boundary, not a lot, but the applicant is proposing to plant 2 trees per lot. Again, that's consistent with the community planting plan that's been in place for earlier phases. And these trees would be placed along the driveways of these lots. So for utilities, there are existing public utilities that are available on the eastern side of 230 and Fort Northwest. And those utilities would serve the 5th edition here. The engineer did review the plans, which are generally consistent with the city requirements. Again, a few technical comments, but nothing major there. There is a drainage and utility easement that's currently established over the wetlands on site, or the wetlands on site as they were 20 years ago, or when the 3rd edition was platted. So that drainage and utility easement would be vacated as part of the platting process and then replaced to reflect the new areas of where those wetlands are. So again, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the development stage PUD amendment, the preliminary plat, and then the drainage and utility easement vacation request. So with that, are there any questions about the 5th edition?
Okay, well, the questions I have is are these lots going to be connected to the MUSA, to our MUSA, or are they going to be septic as well?
They're connected to the MUSA.
Okay, all right, that helps. Makes a big difference when you're taking away 3,600 square feet of wetland area. This 3,600 square feet of wetland, explain to the council this wetland credits.
Sounds like carbon credits.
It is.
Yeah, I want to understand that one.
It doesn't stay in the community.
Nice.
Mayor and Council, and actually, Councilmember Robinson may actually be able to answer this question more in depth than I can. But wetland credits, as I understand, are something that a developer can buy, and it goes into a pool, which then can be used statewide to develop wetlands in the area. So they're filling in wetlands and then paying into this pool so that eventually wetlands will be replaced.
But that pool may or may not benefit us.
I believe that.
Okay, and so I want to ask you, in filling this 3,600 square feet up, and again, it's city sewer and water, so there's no septic fields as well, which is good. How will that have a negative effect to the rest of that wetland area, or will it be, of course, graded properly and everything else, but will not have an overall effect other than a positive effect, even though they're cutting out 3,600 square feet? I mean, you basically said a large part of this lot is wetlands, so it even gives to me that you want to build a house on it, although anything's buildable. I understand that.
Right, Mayor and Council, as far as filling in 3,600 square feet of wetlands, when we're talking about 9 acres of wetlands on the site, it's a fairly small amount that's being filled in. The city engineer has looked at it and hasn't mentioned any issues as far as concerns with drainage or concerns with filling in this wetland. What will it do to the other areas on the site?
Well, I mean, I would agree with you that 9 times 43,560 square feet equals 392,000 square feet of wetland. Okay, so we're not actually, it's about 10%, a little less than 10%. So it's not a big part. I understand. I'm still trying to wonder why you want to build a house on that much wetland.
Good at Grand Rapids.
God help. Okay. Anyways, all right. The engineer doesn't feel there's a problem. We have credits that may benefit us or may not benefit us, but we'll have that in place. And it's hooked to NISA, which does make me feel better that it's not septic as well, because then with the wetlands and septic areas and a backup septic area, a second alternative site to septic, you might be really squeezing the house out here. But it will be for sure hooked to city sewer water. All right. Rob, I'll start with you.
Well, I see two big four-wheeler lots here that create havoc. I see all these little dotted lines around where the lots are, but the person that's gonna buy these two lots, their lot looks relatively large. And if I owned an ATV, I'd head down to the wetlands until I got caught. But, I want some provisions that wetlands is kind of off limits, so that the first time that we have a report to the police that, just like the stormwater drainage pond, is there something that we can do to preserve the wetlands as far as destruction? That would be my guess on these two lots.
Mayor and council, and that's correct. I think the one lot we need to look at sounded more like a drainage and utility. These wetlands are actually registered wetlands, so they do have a different set of protections from the get-go.
Okay, perfect.
By the way, I'll correct myself, the actual amount is less than 1%. 1%. So it's really not a big deal, I understand that. And once again, I do feel better with not having septic as well, or alternative second site, because that would really be a mess there. But I guess some people just like, well, wetlands, no one's gonna build around them, I guarantee you.
And they're not gonna have any neighbors, and it would be, they're two beautiful lots, and whoever gets them, great. But I just wanna make sure that there's protections on that wetland, and people that buy them recognize, you can only go so far back, and then you're disturbing the wetlands.
So good point. Because wetlands are important. All right, good. Sarah?
I agree. I mean, I think they may have a little difficulty selling the lots, but if they can make it work and somebody wants to buy them, as long as we're making sure that they're not disturbing the wetland.
Right, but understand something, these are also what, 4 or 5 acre lots type of thing like that, so 4 or 5 acre lots usually would be septic as well. The fact that they're hooking to city sewer water, there really is a benefit to them. And it's supposed to understand. It's really when you go 2.5 acres up, you're going septic as well. And then you have that alternative site, so really, I mean, they'll be private for sure. No one's gonna take away the rest of the wetlands and building, I can say that, or this council will allow it anyway. Joe?
Oh, my questions are for the state on these wetland credits. Who's monitoring that one?
We'll probably never see it, so. That it?
That's it.
Okay, Kevin?
Dave, it says the driveways can be constructed between 10 and 24 feet wide, and it says these are proposed 12-foot wide. Is that enough for this, again, for proper fire?
What was the overall length of that driveway?
Cul-de-sac is there, but
No problem.
We don't have building plans yet that really identify what we'll get for actuals.
Somewhere in the 250 feet range.
So when we get to that type of length from curb to house, you almost have to be getting to look at that as a fire department access road rather than a driveway. 250 feet, we're losing 10 pounds per square inch for every 100 feet friction loss. So you're losing 30 pounds of pressure almost right off.
On your water.
On your water. There's things that we would do to certainly overcome that. But that's, from a fire protection standpoint, that's a long distance.
So on that premise right there, maybe should there be something with a fire hydrant somewhere in there?
Well, there should be one in the cul-de-sac. I'd have to
Right, but
actually
there should
go out to 250.
be, should there be another one?
No, it's not necessarily an issue of having that supply, because we can boost the supply up with a pump, right? But if we have to park in the cul-de-sac, deploy 250 feet of hose from the curb to the front door, and we're still not in the house yet,
Yeah.
you know, that's an awfully long way, right? And the longest that we have pre-connected on the truck is about 250 feet. So the delay would be stretching the line that entire distance, plus adding line and overcoming that friction loss. So when you look at 12 foot wide to go 250 feet.
Right,
for
but if you put
property
another,
line,
but if you put another hydrant halfway in,
it's not a hydrant issue, it's
But
a
you gotta
pump
connect.
capacity issue,
okay.
right? So at 12 feet, preferably we would like our longest stretch of line to be our greatest diameter, right? So that would be our supply line from the hydrant to the engine itself, right? The shortest length that we would want is our actual operational or tactical line. So at 12 feet, we're not going to get a fire truck down there and be able to string poles all the way down. You know, we would probably want to consider maybe widening that out to 14, 16, 18, or similar to what we would consider a fire department access road. That would be something that we could consider, certainly. But at about 250 feet, that's a long,
And that's a
it's a long
12,
way to get to
and
the
that's
front
a
door.
12 feet.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying go to 14 or 16 feet to make it work?
I think if we can gain some additional width without deterring the plans, that's certainly an advantage.
Is that possible with this?
To merge the driveway at 16 feet further out before the split is kind of what we're saying.
Mayor and Council, that could be something to consider, is that it's a shared driveway for a length and then.
Well, we sure hate to have a fire there, we can't get the hose out there to fight the fire.
We'll get it there. It's gonna take us some time. It's gonna be unique.
Yeah, and what, trickle water?
It's gonna be unique for
So pressure,
setback.
pressure.
But we'll get it done, trust me. We'll get water there.
Right, but seconds make a difference.
For sure.
Minutes make a difference,
For
right?
sure.
So Mayor and Council, they do have a proposed hydrant identified right on the, where the cursor is. And then additionally, we don't have actual building plans that have the surveys outlining driveway length and house placement. So some of that will change between now and the actual build. This is how they're proposing
Okay.
it for the process of this function, but where the house actually lands could be pulled 50 feet closer to the cul-de-sac. So until we have that point, but they do have a hydrant.
Well, at least they have a concern by fire.
Park dedication fee is only $100 per lot. Any reason for that, when other developments are quite a bit more?
Mayor and Council, that $100 per lot, I have, again, partial documentation of the original PUD, and that's one of the documents I have, is establishing that the park dedication for this area is 100 per lot.
That's a
And
great
that's,
negotiation, by the way.
well, and it's because there's the golf course is
Sure.
on this, is a part of this PUD.
So it's kind of grandfathered out there.
So that was, yeah, yep.
Okay,
I'd say that would be good.
that's all I have, thank you.
I'd say that's one that would be good, so. Okay, anything else, anybody? Okay. So are we at a point to motion this now?
Correct, Mayor and Council, the suggested motions, again, are in your packet as well as on the screen. So the first would be to approve the PUD amendment. That would amend the PUD for both of the additions. So it would allow multifamily uses on Outlot D of Turtle Ponds, and would allow single-family uses on Outlot B of Turtle Ponds, third edition. The second motion would be to approve the preliminary plat for the fourth edition. The third would be to approve the preliminary plat and associated drainage and utility easement for the fifth edition.
Okay.
Those are the suggested motions.
Okay. So, no other questions by council on anything?
I have no question, Mayor. Is at this point that we can ask, like for PUD 4, we could ask for, like Rob's suggestion of pushing that street a little farther and additional foliage being planted, increased number of trees? I mean, can we request those conditions be put in there?
Correct. Now would be the time to add any conditions.
And how do I do that? I mean, before we make the motion, how do I present that to you?
You would, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would move to approve say whatever you're approving and then say with the condition.
Condition one, okay.
Or how about we just go with council recommendations?
You gotta clarify.
Hey,
Clarify
so
that.
we want to be specific.
Ah, geez.
For number.
We're gonna say what the hell kind of
All right, Dave,
conditions
make
are
it
you
happen.
talking?
Kill us, whatever.
You wanna add whatever?
Okay, let's do this one at a time, okay? I need a motion for PUD amendment, ordinance 255, second series, first reading. Is there anything we have to add to that at this particular point, or is that one okay?
Is there anything that you want to add to that?
Was there anything we're gonna add to that one?
I'm sorry, for what part?
The first one, the ordinance 255.
That's for PUD 4?
PUD amendment, ordinance 255, second series, first reading.
Mayor and council, that's with the suggested motions that is kind of outlined to walk through those items and then we can.
Okay,
after you-
so do I have a motion to adopt PUD amendment with the suggested motions, ordinance 255, second series, first reading? Is that okay?
Mayor and council, how about this?
We have to do them individually.
Where it says, yeah, all the motions are there on the board, where it says, with the findings and facts as presented by staff and any additional findings that may have been determined tonight, just adding that at the end. Findings and conditions.
Yeah, take them on. As long as we discuss it.
Fine, we can.
Conditions that may have been added here tonight.
Just read it, Joe, would you please? I mean, because, please.
So is that, how do they know what conditions those are? Is it gonna be,
Because I think Councilman Robinson just added vegetation or
I'd like to increase the tree count for that northern section there from 4 to 8 trees would be a requirement that I would suggest. And then whatever Rob can embellish on his suggestion, which was the fire chief.
Which was the road being connected
To the property.
all the way up to the property line at least, and then I don't know what that looks like as far as how close that other road is.
So how can we word this to get this motion in place?
Mayor and council, the first motion, let's just take it, the first motion is just about the PUD amendment. So it's just allowing multifamily uses on the site that was once commercial, and it would be just allowing single-family uses on the site that's,
Just as, so stated just as is.
so they're really, staff is not presenting any conditions for this specific motion.
Okay, good,
So if we
thank
just
you.
take that one
No.
first.
On this first one,
Other conditions would
than-
go with preliminary plat approvals.
That this can't take effect until the 2040 plan is approved.
Correct.
so do you want to put that in there too then?
No, that's already.
Already in there?
That's-
Right. So we can just read this as,
the first one we're gonna do that?
Read number one, reads this.
I have to read that according to this too? Do I?
You don't have, anybody can.
Well, I'm going to, okay? All right, do I have a motion tonight to adopt PUD amendment ordinance 255, second series, first reading? Move to approve the PUD amendment to allow multifamily uses on Outlot D of Turtle Ponds and single-family uses on Outlot B of Turtle Ponds, third edition, with the findings of fact as presented by staff.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Councilmember Bauer makes a motion, do I have a second?
A second, Mayor.
And Councilmember Robinson makes a second, do I have any further discussion? So ordinance, roll call?
Robinson,
Aye.
Gilmore,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Ludwig. Aye. Pass 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, now, moving on to Turtle Ponds fourth edition, preliminary plat approval, resolution 2019-43. Do I have any? Do I have anything to add on to that?
4 is for safety.
Would I read the second one? I'll read the second one of that one? Okay, good, okay, fine. Turtle Ponds fourth edition preliminary plat approval, resolution 2019-43. Move to approve the preliminary plat for Turtle Ponds fourth edition with the conditions and findings of fact as presented by staff. Do I have a motion?
I would make that motion with the suggested changes of 4 to 8 trees made by Councilmember Robinson, and the road moving as close as possible to that other road.
Property. Good problem.
Yes, property.
That, all right, Dave? Okay.
I'll second that.
Can I get a first?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. Okay. Councilor Mueller makes a first, Councilor Bauer makes a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. Turtle Pond's 5th edition preliminary plat and drainage and utility easement vacation resolution 2019-44. Move to approve a preliminary plat and associated drainage and utility easement vacation for Turtle Pond's 5th edition with the conditions and findings of fact as presented by staff.
I'll make that.
Councilmember Dubar makes a motion. Do I have a second? Councilmember Rubin makes a second. Any further discussion?
I have something, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Is this where we want to bring in merging the driveway up?
The merging driveway would have been for the 4th edition.
No, we did that. We did that.
Oh, I'm
First,
sorry,
The
yes,
two
the
single
shape.
driveways, 250 feet, 16 feet wide. Is that the 14 to 16 for a fire apparatus?
Yes,
At
this
least-
would be the opportunity.
Where do we
for
want
motion.
Do we want to, so far from the house, merge driveway? What kind of
I think
distance?
just as long as we can get a little bit of increase width, we'll be okay. So 12's a little narrow, 14 I would be happy, 16 would probably be optimal for us.
Well, that helps us word that one, right? Okay, I'm gonna read this again. I'm gonna read it
I
again.
just want to make sure.
Turtle Pond's 5th edition preliminary plat and drainage utility and utility easement vacation resolution 2019-44. Move to approve the preliminary plat and associated drainage and utility easement vacation for Turtle Pond's 5th edition with conditions and findings of fact as presented by staff, with that road to be between 14 and 16 preferably. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Bauer makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilor Ruther makes a second. Any further discussion? Being a resolution, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Beth, for that work. That was a lot. That was a lot. Now, a lot of this will be more defined as the plans come forward, correct? I understand that, right? I mean, the plans, as the plans come forward that you have, will be more defined as we get next time.
Correct.
Okay, good. So let's move on here, please. To 2040 comp plan revisions. Yes, let's do that.
So, Mayor and Council, staff wanted to give you an update on the 2040 comprehensive plan. It's been a while since we checked in on that. So, staff has been working through the Met Council process. We've submitted it twice to Met Council. They've provided their comments twice. So we're on the 3rd round of submittals here coming up, hopefully this week. So we just wanted to give you an update about some of the things that have been in flux as we go along. So the first is that we recategorized the land that's within the rural, wild, and scenic area as urban reserve. And this is something, so we kept it within the MUSA, but this is something that the comments that we got back, we're required to be consistent with the existing laws that are on the books about this land. So our solution to that was to designate this area right here as urban reserve.
So when you say urban reserve means what?
What that means, I can show the description.
Because it's in the Rum River Scenic District, right?
Correct. So that means that until the rules change, we would be allowing basically cluster subdivisions or things that preserve the ability to long-term divide in an urban way. So I can pull up the description for you here.
Mayor and Council, we would be creating a new zoning district over that Rum River Scenic area. If somebody was to come forward with a land split or some type of development, we would be looking for them to identify to us how it's going to, in the future, fold into that higher density if we were to get a law change or get a variance request passed that allowed us to go with the MUSA North and more urbanize that area. So what this does is it creates a definition, which Beth will share, and then also a zoning district. So if somebody wants to come in and part out a parcel, we would have them kind of ghost plat and tell us how this is going to not landlock something or create these kind of funky areas we end up with when you're doing these piecemeal parcels. and how it will kind of be contiguous in the future for development.
So it gives us some guidelines. And
Correct.
then, and then basically, it's still dependent, of course, on the DNR ruling being changed in the future
Correct, otherwise.
for that area.
Yep, until or if that DNR ruling is changed, it's still at the density that's required by state rules right now.
So basically, what I'm correct in thinking here, is that, let's just say, for instance, the DNR 20 years down the road changes it, we'd be more apt, we'd be more prepared to go along with it than behind the eight ball, be upfront with it in conjunction with it.
Correct, we're planning for the opportunity.
So that,
sometime
so
in
I
the
was
future.
saying this for the viewing audience.
Yep.
Nothing's changing at all. Still, the DNR will not allow anything, so I don't want to hear it on the Facebook page, please, because we're not changing anything. So I just want to make that perfectly understood there on record, that we're not doing anything at all. We're done with the DNR, done with that area, we're just done. But this actually does something in case somewhere down the road, generational or whatever, the DNR changes its attitude, whatever, we'd be more apt to be able to go with the flow.
Correct.
Okay.
The other larger changes that we've made here, we've included some language on inflow and infiltration. So staff and Paul have been working. Basically, this language just discusses the city's existing policies on inflow and infiltration. Just gives a little bit more detail as far as what that is. So that was requested as part of the Met Council review. So nothing, again, nothing's changing here. This is simply stating the existing city policies on how inflow and infiltration are handled and processed. The next thing is that as part of our back and forth with the Met Council, our requirement for affordable housing, so our allocation for affordable housing has increased. And that's because of how we've completed our calculations for sewer service and the households that will be served. We're expecting that the households that are going to be served are within the MUSA as opposed to outside where it would be well and septic. Therefore, the housing affordability, that allocation increased. This isn't something, again, we didn't change anything. The city is still well able to handle the required allocation. So again, no land uses were changed to meet the additional units or anything like that. But
So
it's
what
just
was
another
the increase from? It was 213 now, so what was it before, just roughly?
I believe the increase was from, I want to say about 173 to 213.
173, so basically about just under 40 something, 37 something. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then the final change that was made is in the housing chapter. It's listing various housing tools. So the housing tools that we were requested to include were fair housing policy, HIAs, partnerships with sources of preservation funding, local 4D tax incentives programs, and preservation of manufactured homes. So those are now included as part of the housing tools table. Majority of those are simply that the city recognizes this as a tool and has chosen at this time to not utilize that tool. So not saying that the city's going to use it, but recognizing that it exists out there. So should the city ever want to in the future. Otherwise, if there's any other questions on this, otherwise we just wanted to update you. We'll be submitting the third round this week. So hopefully this one will come back complete and we can move forward.
Any questions by council here? Thank you, Beth, good job, and hopefully we'll get that passed. A lot of times to make it. Okay, now, we're going to schedule a work session, and this is for, okay? So, but as I say to you now, this work session for this other topic, can that be incorporated in this, or do we need to go separate?
That's up to you guys. I know that this is going to be probably a lengthy
one.
I mean, yeah, I would imagine. I know MnDOT's really eager to talk about those plans with you guys. So if you guys want to add that topic onto this, you can do that. Otherwise, we can just find another day for that. And I just want to, I guess, I did tell Rob that I was not planning on having a work session on it because I thought that We did spend an awful lot of time, and I didn't have any new information to present. It sounds like tonight we kind of decided we're gonna talk about it again, and that's fine. I just, I wasn't trying to stifle anybody or any points.
No one thought that, Joe.
Yeah, I just wanna get that out.
No, it's just the fact that we were at the last council meeting, we did say to him, bring your facts to us at a work session, and that's what we'll do. No, we don't do anything behind closed doors, we do everything up front, so, okay, so here's the deal, we could.
I was gonna say, too, I think we should do the mid-job one
Separate,
separate.
yep.
and then
Yes.
set it up.
Right, because we really need to take time to both. Even if we made it at 5 o'clock, we still would rush, and we don't want to rush. Both topics are important, so, all right, so, the date that works best for me, and I can just say for my particular reasons, would be Monday, October 28th. Okay, then I guess that's not gonna work.
I can't do school.
No, that means that's very important. So let me just look at my calendar.
I think I'm pretty open for any of those days.
Yeah, me too. I think, I'm open for.
Yeah, either Wednesday works fine for me.
All right, well, the only other dates that are working for me.
I already got mine.
Okay, I can do the 23rd. I can't do the 3rd. I can't, and the 28th can't be done, but we need everybody there. It's been done before.
I can do the 20th.
Okay, so can everybody do the 23rd at 6 o'clock at the committee room?
Yes.
Let's put that on there right now, so I can place here. Session 6. 6 o'clock, okay. Okay, so we'll have that work session there on the 23rd at 6 p.m. in the community room. Joe, okay? All right, and now, while we're at it, a work session for this other topic. So, we have to go into unless you could do it the 28th.
I
You
can't
can.
miss the school board meeting. I can watch it. And meet with the superintendent. That works, everything else. I don't think it works.
Okay, otherwise,
I'm fine with
we go in November?
Yeah.
Okay, just, I have to. Okay, so what about, let me push back there. Is Tuesday the 1st good for anybody? No, I gotta take that back. November. November. Second shut back here. Okay, so can we do, would it be all right to shove it to the 11th or 12th of November?
I think the 11th is Veterans Day. We can't have it on.
Just a minute. Just be patient till we're well, how's Tuesday the 12th then? Everybody?
I'm probably good.
I'll miss the school board meeting, but yes.
Did it go to the Tuesday?
The school board meeting has changed to Tuesday when it's on holiday. But again, I will miss one school board meeting, I will watch it, I will contact school board members if I have any questions.
The 13th?
Or the 13th? Everybody?
13th works for me.
All right, let's go 13th, 5:30. 5:30 work session at the City Hall. Okay? Okay, so that's gonna be 13th Wednesday at 5:30 at the City Hall, Joe?
Yeah.
And that topic will be,
Fire chief position, and I think if, I mean, I guess I don't know how you guys, whoever wants to submit information, get it to me by a certain time, or, I mean, just so we don't have 5 people bringing 5 different documents to all hash out, maybe funnel it all through me, and then we'll get it out at the same time for everybody.
all right, and no one thought you were trying to do anything bad.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
That's fine. It's called for and we'll do it. As Councilmember Robinson says, we like work sessions, right?
We sure do. Well, they have been productive. I mean, there's a lot of cities that don't do it. And we can see what.
Well, we want to air this decision out. We want to make sure it's done right. We don't want to backdoor anything and let social media dictate work
Well,
sessions.
Ralph had a situation where he couldn't make that one work session. We vetted it out pretty good, and this is his opportunity to participate.
Right, and we did tell him to bring his facts to the work session.
Right.
We told him that last one. We're going to do it now, okay?
No.
All right? Green bond? All right.
No, and I appreciate the openness that we're doing it. I mean, it's not, I'm glad we're doing it.
Should always be open. That's what we ran on, that's what we'll do. All right, moving on to community development, third quarter. Kate, you're up.
Mayor and council, tonight before you is the third quarter report for community development. The first section is the MnDOT. The comments for the survey are open until October 10th, so we're hoping that more people are taking part in that and getting comments in. I go through the economic development that has occurred over the last quarter. We've got a lot going on Bridge Street, several redevelopment sites that we are working on getting prepped. Demolition will happen on one site this fall and starting to market those in local events this fall. The regional economic development, we continue to be involved with the countywide efforts. There are several events that have happened this summer and a couple that continue into October, making the awareness that St. Francis is here and we have availability of projects for anybody interested. The next page talks about our housing development. We have 6 developments that are pretty active and in forward motion. Right now with River's Edge, 3 areas have been approved. We are waiting until spring before we'll see 2 of them move forward. Developers are talking about lengthy delays right now because of the amount of rain we've had this summer. It's pushing a lot of different projects out. So Woodhaven continues to add units. The Meadows is under construction with 2 4-unit buildings. We discussed the Turtle Ponds tonight. Swiss Landing is waiting for a buyer developer to move it forward to preliminary plat. And then Chelsea Gardens is also under construction. So all of those continue to move fairly successfully. Building department reports start on page 3. 33 homes were built in this third quarter out of the 50, so we are a little bit ahead this year from last year. We're still a little behind from 2017. It will start to taper off at this point. We'll have a handful that may come in before the end of the year, but that end of quarter 3 is kind of the last big push. Permit value is a huge indication of how things are going. However, this year it's kind of skewed due to the large school district remodeling projects that really threw our numbers off from previous years.
And
But,
Quick Trip too.
that is not in our improvement values.
Okay.
That is just literally the remodeling and existing structures. So, but any investment like that is always a good thing, as it does keeps the values up in our community and shows that we're maintaining and keeping the value on our existing products and structures here. Page 4 talks about the permit revenue overall, both counter-based permits and our valuation. This one is the one that shows Quick Trips, the school district, all of our new homes. 2019 is very high because of all of the commercial. 2017, you'll see is high because we had a large push of single-family homes. I would expect 2020 could also be very high in regards to the single-family homes again, because of all of the pre-development work we've been doing in land use permits, we've been doing this.
Right, you have the River Bank second and third coming up in spring.
Correct, between River's Edge and the Turtles, and so we've got a lot of good momentum on having new units next year, and additional Meadows townhome units to go in next year. Administration-wise, we've been working on several ordinances. This is a short list of the ones that went through and changes for the third quarter, our comprehensive plan, so our third one will be submitted this week. A lot of the delays with this plan have been due to the DNR overlay district, and it is definitely slow, but it is moving forward. Rental and vacant programs are very busy. We've spent some time with the lists from the county to update those lists and have an understanding of our actual number of rental properties. And it's a constant to clean up the vacant properties as those move and sell quickly sometimes. Then our conditional use permits are another continuous project where we're trying to make sure we're not misrepresenting a property that no longer has an active permit. So, code enforcement on page 5, I did a spreadsheet there that kind of outlines the two processes. Our existing process and the way we handle it when a complaint comes in the door. If you look at the changes, it's really those first 3 sections that identifies with our new update with staff from PD, having more of that interaction with the property owner, and then at the point on that 4th square down where it gets handed over to community development, and then it starts that existing process. So once we get it in at City Hall, then we start the process as normal. We've had our interaction, we've tried our first attempt, and that would fall over into the existing process. Then on page 5 is our list of some of our repeats and our busy properties when it comes to code enforcement. We did have the 2 properties that we extended. Both of those were able to meet their compliance deadline in that 3rd quarter, so that was a great success that we gave them that extra time. They used it wisely, and they both met our conditions. So, and then the next list is the multi-year and ongoing properties. Several of these are addresses we've talked about between work sessions. They've been on their reports for several quarters or years, and they continue to kind of drive our process as far as code enforcement with them. But incremental, sometimes improvements, and then we can go backwards, or neighbors get frustrated. So I don't think these are problems that we're going to solve in a day, but they are at least properties to be aware of. So, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, one question I have here, and I just want to get your take on this. On page 5, this says, with the quote from the resource officer, letter left with property owner with and/or without contact made. Letter provides a deadline for compliance. What I would like to see added is, if the letter is left without contact, a picture should be taken of letter being posted for city files. And the reason I say that is because some of the people that have come forth to us say they don't get these letters. When we know we posted them, like the one couple that we were had extenuating circumstances, so they never went out the front door, but the letters were posted. So if you take a picture, and I actually go by this because Phil, our building official, takes pictures and puts it down in files for us and all that to protect the city and show that he's done this work and all that. So I would say to you, if the officer goes out there, knocks on the door and hands it to somebody, that's one thing. But if no one's home, take a picture of it, which gives a date and a stamp, day stamp, which I know the police are like doing that then, quite a bit too. So I'm saying, that way we know we've served them, they can't come back to us in a abatement hearing and say, well, we never got it. If that would be permissible.
And Mayor and Council, I don't know if, it's really that first administrative letter from our department that sets things in motion. So with the work we're doing with PD, we're giving them that first compliance deadline, but the next letter they receive from us isn't necessarily that citation. It kind of moves it into then a more formal administrative process. So it would be an extra step we could do.
Well, he just has to take his phone out and take a picture.
Probably not, but.
I mean.
What I would say too, that I get what you're saying, but I think that she can come into it, I don't know, maybe not necessarily Todd has it back up, but if you you were to go to court or something, they say, well, how do you prove that they had it unless you had that face-to-face contact, because the neighbor could come and run over, rip it off.
No, but you could show that you
Not
left
that
it.
it's likely, but they could claim that.
Well, I mean, there's
Just
always,
saying.
well, attorney's always gonna make, no offense, Dave, but make a way out. And I'm just saying, what it really does is, it shows at least that they were served, the document's there. If they
You tried.
chose not to
Shows
open it
that
up.
you tried.
Well, right, I mean, at least they got it, okay? I mean, because again, people did say in the last one that they never went out their front door. And we know we sent them because it was there. So I'm just trying to make it easier for us when we go to abatements, which is not a topic we like to deal with as a council. So, I mean, a simple picture can't be that hard. Give a stamp on it, put it in the file, and it's there. It was served. I mean, and that way, like I say again, at least it shows something there. I mean, otherwise, it's he said, it's they said, we said. We said we served it, they said they didn't get it. This way it's there. Whether they open it up or not, I can't help you there. I mean, I can't make you read it. At least they got it. That would be my only
With
change.
that, it says letter left with the property owner,
Or with
are
that.
we verifying, well, if we hand it to them, are we verifying that they're the property owner and making sure that they're an adult? I mean, you give a 14-year-old kid 11, mom and dad, you never see it. I don't anticipate we're doing that, but are we, I mean, do they verify that they actually are the owner?
Well, and Mayor and Council, property may or may not be the house property. Some of these property owners are the vehicle property owners. So we do have names, one of our main targets right now is that vehicle trailer piece. So we do have the ability to speak with the owners based on those the registrations. So property is kind of open as far as structural and the property of whatever's sitting in the middle of the yard. So, yep.
I don't know if there's any perfect way to do anything.
No, I don't think there is.
I mean, they're gonna fight it, they're gonna fight it.
Right.
Dave make their own money.
Well, I'm just saying, because on page 6 shows you of the two that were given leniency, 6-month leniencies, and actually solved the problem, immediately and remedied it. And then you have the other ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 or 6 of them that, no matter what you do, seems like they're always coming back. So just do it the best you can.
Fix one thing and create another.
Other than that, I'm very glad to see the city growing in the right way, revenues coming in and all that, and quick trip and school buying and everything like that. And then we have a development in play. So next year, as the economy holds tight, hopefully something will happen good for us. Anyway, Kevin, any comments you have?
Yeah, just a couple. I'm really glad to hear the third quarter for building permits that was up. That's interesting that it's a spring and summer and then boom. And you said 30 permits for new homes in the third quarter alone?
I believe it 33.
Wow,
Our
that's-
50 was in that third quarter.
That's fantastic. That kind of puts, builders do want to come here, and people do want to live here, and contrary to what's been said out and about in the last year and a half or plus, that's good to see. I know there's one going up in my neighborhood as well. Kate, any interaction or involvement with the permit fees, adjustments, calibrations? I see that Star Tribune's had some blurbs out there. What exposure have you had? Can you share any briefly with us? Has anybody been asking what St. Francis is doing, and are we in line, or are you seeing stuff that we should tweak as well?
So Mayor and Council, there has been a lot of media recently in regards to the building permits. So the Builders Association is behind this Housing First organization that created these documents to make it look like the builders are at an unfair advantage in regards to the cost of building in a city. Some cities, the way they have their funding reported to the state. So a second piece of that is we're all required to report to the state. The state submits the form, we fill it out. How that is completed is a bit subjective. So a city, we could turn around as a city and report this whole piece, or we could show what our actual revenues are, because you have all the costs of staff, we have Metro West, we have engineering. With that first report of Housing First, the first document that came out was really about housing is not affordable to build in Minnesota, and it's kind of the city's fault. They're expensive, they're regulation barriers. The second spin-off was specifically about these housing permit fees and how expensive it is. If you look at the building of a $300,000 home though, by the time you take off WAC and SAC and some of these other fees, that building permit is $5,000. So it's really the smallest piece of an entire home build that they're really coming after all of the cities for. And they've targeted some cities very hard. Some cities have joined with the League of Minnesota Cities. There have been some that have pushed back down at the legislature. Some of them have testified already down at the legislation. It's kind of a moving piece that we'll have to see what is potentially brought forward in 2020's legislative session. Our building permit fees are set within state statute, which are set by the industry itself. So for them to come back saying they're too high, it's the industry setting those fees. So there's a lot of back discussion that isn't being discussed in how they came up with this cost issue. They're also not taking into account a lot of the years the cities had to front those building official fees and staff fees when building wasn't happening at all. So it may look like a lot this year, but for the last 5 or 10 years prior, some of these cities were in terrible negative deficits in their building departments because there wasn't any revenue coming in. So it's just not a very clear, what's being represented isn't being very clear or direct as the actual pictures. So right now you've got a lot of cities going against some of these building reports that are coming out, and the legislature is kind of stuck in the middle. So I think it's going to be a continuous argument through the next legislative session, and we'll see where it goes. I think as far as where we're sitting, we're paying for our costs. We're not making a windfall. You know, on our commercial permit, our revenues are high, but at the same time, we're giving portions of those funds to Metro West to manage these very difficult and complex commercial permits. So I believe the city of St. Francis is in a good position with this, but it'll be interesting to see if we're forced to make changes because of this overall reporting that came out during this guidance. A long, short answer.
As a sideline, is it also causing some cities to actually look at that some permits are fat and some are skinny? I mean, they might be taking an honest look at some, like, you know, maybe this is a little out of line for what we're, you know, a roof is X or Y. I've heard from neighboring cities the same thing, that the consumer, you know, like in a neighbor city, you know, it costs X for a roof permit over here, Y for, you know. So is it causing the cities to look at their own fees and say, well, and maybe there's some adjustment there, just like the water rate. We haven't been charging enough in some areas and maybe too much in other areas. Is it a byproduct?
And it is. So even with our fee schedule, this time of year, I sit down with the building official, and we have to really look at all those counter permits. And the counter permits are your roofing permits, your siding permits, windows. You know, we've based our fee on what it would cost us for Metro West to go out and do that inspection, or for Phil to go out and do that with our staff, you know, any reviewing, any administration, the processing of the permits, the paperwork. So our costs are very guided by what we're actually doing. I think, you know, a lot of cities do the same thing we do, where we're doing this kind of looking at a glance every year and seeing if they're in line. There may be some cities that do have to really take a step back and adjust that. But what the Builders Association is really coming after is that true new construction, and that these building permits are a hindrance upon them putting a new home in the state of Minnesota. So.
But see, the difference with that, and I've pulled many permits started going up with sewer access and water access charges. And that's the biggest part. I mean, you're paying for that and that maintains the system, or helps maintain the system. So, you know, for instance, one of the things that Stacy, when she divided her lot, the actual permit was only like $3,500 to build her house, because she was septic a well. But with SAC and WAC, that's actually the biggest difference. Do I think some cities maybe gouge in certain areas of permitting? Yeah, I do. We're not doing that here, because we are doing it basically on what we need to have Metro West go out, or like you said, Phil to go out. But really, it comes down to SAC and WAC as the biggest cost factor, because we're hooking the city sewer and waters in all cities right now. Now, if you're going septic and well, you're going to have you may not have the permit as far as the permit part of building a house, but you'll have the fee to put the well in the septic field, which can run up to $15,000 or $25,000. I mean, so you're going to pay somewhere to pipe it. But I think I understand where they come from as far as some cities may gouge you, but we're not doing that here. And SAC and WAC is something that's here. So We have to maintain the system. It's not a matter of just hooking to it, you have to maintain it, as Paul can allude to, so. All right. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, thank you,
Joe?
Gage.
I don't have any questions, great report as usual, and thank you, keep it up.
Okay. Sarah?
Second what Joe said.
Rob?
I'll third what Joe said.
I'll fourth that. So thank you, good job. I like to see the graphs and the numbers look good. And what's really nice about this, by the way, we may not have gotten the variance from Mount River Scenic area, but the town still grows. Okay? And that's important. And once again, as I stated before, what we're doing with that urban reserve is just staging us for the very, very, very far future, whether it'll ever take shape or need. I doubt it. I don't think so at this time, because we know the DNR will act to that. But it's generational. Things change. Things can change. Who knows? But as far as right now, this city has no plan to go forward with any variance on that acreage. I can safely say that, council. I can safely say that, and staff. So it's just a matter of seeing nice growth in the area that we have, which is the urban area. So I like that very much. All right, moving on to council member reports. Rob, we'll start with you, okay?
I don't really have much to report. We're gonna have a work session in November for hiring a full-time fire chief, not hiring a full-time fire chief. If you, the public, want to voice your concerns, make sure that you voice them to all the city council members and the mayor. If you're for it and you want to address me about those issues, I'm willing to listen. I just want to make sure that the public is aware that this is moving forward. It appears to be on the December 2nd, City Council agenda. So get your voices out there if you oppose this, so that your elected officials can vote your favor. So that's all I have.
Okay, Sarah?
I attended the school board meeting on September 23rd. I also attended the homecoming football game on Friday night, even though we lost. There was a really good turnout, and students seemed to enjoy the homecoming week. And I just want to remind everybody that the St. Francis Fire Department is having their French toast breakfast and open house this Saturday, October 12th, from 8 a.m. to noon. Come out, it's a really good time.
All right, thank you. Joe?
I will hold myself accountable, say I did not make the EDA meeting due to a family matter, what we just had. I will also say that I would encourage people like crazy to please understand that Facebook is not reality. The city does not run on Facebook. You have to, again, somebody posted something about trying to tag everybody in a certain thread. And the problem with that is, and I try to explain it to people on that thread, that you can't get too many people on there. It can be construed as an open meeting violation. It's a state statute. I don't make the rules, but that's how it works. So I encourage people that if you can sit on Facebook all day and share your feelings, whether you're for something or against something or whatever it may be, take 5 minutes to send an email to everybody. The information's there. You can go to the city website. There's many outlets that you can use to do that, but there is a proper forum for it. And please come to meetings if you can. So, go ahead.
Okay, Kevin?
I'll tag on Joe's right off the bat. Again, I've always encouraged people, come on out. Take the time. I know people are busy, school, kids, work, drive time, etc. If you're going to send an email, give us some points. Maybe there's something we have missed. Maybe Rob's going to find some new revelations that we need to see. And on our own accord, our homework, we might find some things that pro work on, but by all means, be involved. That's what it's all about. I was sitting over here while Sarah was talking, and it's interesting that we have to defend ourselves to faceless, voiceless people. You wrote it on an internet site. You didn't come here, but we have to defend ourselves to people who we're talking to a microphone right now. Hopefully you're listening and or watching. I really encourage community involvement. We see Joe here at about every other meeting since I've been here, and even prior to that, and I'm sure the mayor's seen him many times. He comes with some really good points. He comes with points. He comes. He's here. He arrives, which is awesome. And if that's your delegate, you picked a good one, but we'd like to see the rest of you here as well. These things do matter. They're long lasting. They have people's lives. It's in the balance. We have commerce, and this just makes our city a better place when people are more involved. Homecoming, I drove through town on that Friday night. I was so happy to see this town abuzz. The Ponds was packed. Manzetti's was packed. The grocery store and stuff still had going on. It was awesome. It was like our city came alive. It looked like some Hallmark movie you turned on there. It was really neat to see people. It was a beautiful weather night too, which is unusual for Minnesota in the fall. But the MnDOT meeting, I did attend the residential version of it. It was neat to see some ideas and interact with those people. Again, the people who work for MnDOT, they're sincere. They were conscientious. They have good things to talk about. They weren't afraid of anything to talk about. The posted us down there. We were actually talking to a couple of them, and somebody brought up a point. Actually, one of them brought up the own point as we were talking about. So we actually created a new point to put on there. It was for an area for in the county market area to come in and out during that stretch, rather than having to go down to two different points. If you were heading south, you could come right in the county market. That might be something. But again, whether it comes to fruition or not. It was neat to see. I got there kind of late in the process. I hope there was more people that attended, but other than that, I'm happy to live in St. Francis. It was neat to see the last couple weeks, the things going on here, as well as to see 30 new homes being built here in the last quarter, just in the last quarter, permit pulled. So that's all I have.
Now, I want to reiterate and add to what some of the council members already said about Facebook and that. You need to help us serve you better, and the way to do that is to talk to us, either by coming to a meeting, sending an email direct to us, or whatever, and tell us what your issues are. We can address them once we know what your concerns are, and we will look into it just like we did with that first gentleman that got up tonight to speak to us, and we will look into it. But we can't do that based on Facebook distortions and input. So if you really are serious about your concern, then bring it to our attention. Help us to serve you better. I said that more than once, and I'll continue saying that. Also, I want to tell people about October 26th, the National Annual Shred Event, cardboard and fall leaf drop-off at Public Works Facility from 8 a.m. to noon. That's always a good one too, by the way. And I know when they drop off shredded items, we have one of our Public Works directors, not directors, but workers, actually watch the papers go into the shredder. So it's all, secured. So it's just not dropped off and forgot about. So they don't leave until it's shredded. Correct, Paul? Just so people know that. Okay. Also, if you want to see something interesting that our community development director put together, there's two videos. You go to our website and put your cursor on our government, go down to community development, and on there's two links to a YouTube videos, two of them, to promote our city. And it was done for a reasonable price of $1,500, and it was done very nicely. It shows our city, and we'll be putting that out to future developers and people coming to our city. But once again, you hold your cursor on our government, go down and click on our community, and there you'll see two links to YouTube. Very interesting, very nice to see. Showing council that, and it's very interesting. So also, I want to mention about MnDOT and all that. MnDOT is working with us. We'll continue working on this. This is an important situation here. I can't emphasize this enough. I put a link on my St. Francis Post page, and there's also a link. If you hold your cursor on our community on our website, when a window pops up, on the lower left corner is a link to MnDOT. But there's a survey going on right now till October 10th, which will be this Thursday is the deadline for it. But if you can't make a meeting to this, which there'll be one more public meeting coming up, I believe that, Kate, do you know when that is? That's October something, or?
That was December.
December? Mayor and Council, the third public engagement meeting has not been scheduled yet.
Okay.
They will set that once they have a design to present.
Okay, because we just had our last business one.
Correct.
All right, and we have one more public, and then there's the design phase. So you want to catch it before the design phase, as I've been explained to. So all I can say to you is, if you can't make it to a meeting, which you'll be notified of the next meeting out there, of course. But there's that link till Thursday, October 10th. Go to the link and put your 2 cents in the survey. Help us to make this situation that's just Road 47 more user-friendly, more safe above all, and a business district for our city, which I think in the long run, it's just been a true way to get out of our city, but it is a business district for us, and And your input's important, but if we don't know what your input is, then you can't complain later on to me and say, well, or the council that, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. Well, you have a chance to have your input heard, really, right now, because they're listening. They really are listening. Maybe that's because of those 2 accidents. I don't know, but I'll tell you right now that they are here and they are working with us. At the end result, I don't know what it's going to turn out. I know which way the city would like to see it turn out, but at the end of the day, it will be your input that will help make it happen. So on that, any other business we have to talk about? Okay. Also, on October 14th, city offices will be closed for Columbus Day. Okay. Everybody, no other further business? Well, on that, I will call this meeting adjourned at 8:40.